everybody, welcome to my Pete and Pole Air Camper / RV7 YouTube video channel. Thanks for stopping by, I appreciate it. If you've been here before and you've looked at some of the other videos, you've probably noticed the long, boring introduction at the beginning of each one. I am redoing that now. I just want to cut it down, keep it nice and short and sweet and to the point. So again, welcome. One thing I also wanted to make note of is I'm going to include some contact information for those who have questions and would potentially like some help with their project. Haters, don't waste your time. I am Johnny on the spot with the delete button, and I will delete your email post haste and not even read it, so don't waste my time, don't waste yours. Anybody else looking for some help, advice, have questions, concerns, whatever, you'll now be able to contact me directly. I'm quite regular on email, so I should be able to get a response to you relatively quick. I've got a ton of photographs for both aircraft, so if you need some clarification on something, chances are I've got detailed photographs and I'll be able to help you out. Let's see, other than that, I think that's it. I'm going to keep this short. Again, if you like what you see and you want to help me out to get through my RV7 build project, you can visit my GoFundMe. Just do a search for Caretaker Arrow. That's Caretaker with a K. I also have an Amazon wish list. There's some pieces, parts in there that I could use. Again, if you feel moved enough to help me out, it'd be greatly appreciated. Or if you want to just contact me directly, you know, we can talk about whatever, and so I'll just leave it at that. Anyway, thanks for coming by, I appreciate it, and again, hopefully you'll find these videos worth your time, and that's that. So let's get back to building, and I am now going to shut up, and I'll talk to you later. What I'm doing now is I'm just using the fuel tank sealant to permanently attach this access plate, this access cover. So what I've done underneath here, I've decided to use the cork gasket. So I put some fuel tank sealant around on the cork gasket itself on one side, put it in place, ran a couple clecos through it just to get it clocked so that the holes were in alignment. And then I pulled the clecos off, and then I smeared fuel tank sealant on the front face of the cork gasket, and then I fitted the plate in place over top of that, put in my clecos to get everything aligned, and now I'm running in the screws. Now I'm not using the screws that came with the kit because they're Phillips head screws, and if you can imagine the fuselage being here, it's going to be very difficult to get into these with the screwdriver. So I'm using these Allen head, stainless steel Allen head screws, because you could get to them with a 90-degree Allen wrench, which will fit in between the plate and the fuselage a lot easier than a screwdriver. So I've got a number 8 screw, stainless steel, number 8 stainless steel washer. I use a toothpick with a little bit of fuel tank sealant, and I go ahead, I should remove a cleco first. Let me do this one. Pull out the cleco, and I put a little bit of sealant around the hole, and a little, if it bridges across the hole, that's okay, because that will just help seal the threads a little bit. But I just do a little bit around the hole, run the screw in, and I don't tighten it. I just get it started and bring it in just so it touches the flange. So what I'm trying to do, I don't want a lot of fuel tank sealant on the threads, because on the inside of the tank, I don't want a lot of fuel tank sealant being pushed through with the screw and ending up on the nut plate threads on the other side. at some point in the future, if I got to take this plate off and I have to unscrew all these screws, I don't want that fuel tank sealant basically coming off of the threads and laying in the fuel tank. Basically, it becomes dirt at that point. So I'm trying to keep the threads relatively clean, but I'm trying to seal underneath the head so that the fuel won't seep. So that's kind of the plan. That's the way I did my other fuel tank, and I'm just going to go ahead and continue one at a time in a random clocking pattern, run these screws in, and then I'll come back, I'll clean all this up, and then I'll fit the fuel sender. I'm going to try to hold this camera and point and speak about how I got these things in here put together and fuel tank sealed. First thing that I started with was the vent line, which is at the top up here. That's a pretty straightforward line to do. You just need to, after it's dry fit, take it apart, take the parts out, and then I smeared some fuel tank sealant underneath this ridge here on the fitting itself with a toothpick. I ran some fuel tank sealant around it, stuck it through, then I put some fuel tank sealant on the washer, put the washer on the fitting, put some fuel tank sealant on the face of the nut that touches the washer, screwed the nut on, and then I put just a little bit of fuel tank sealant on the threads of the nut that comes off of the line. I just wanted to prevent air from potentially being pulled in there, but I didn't want to put enough fuel tank sealant on so it would make pulling the nut off difficult. And then paying attention to the angle of the fitting. As per the instructions, I went ahead and tightened the nut, making sure that the fitting stayed at the approximate angle that it needs to be. And that was pretty much it for the vent line. And of course, as soon as I'm done with the installation, I come back and clean all the excess RTV off, and in doing so, that creates the nice little fillet seal around everything. After that, I went ahead and moved on to installing the fuel pickup line onto the access cover plate. And that is just like the vent line. You've got a couple of you've got a fitting with a couple of nuts, washers, things like that. And that's it there. So there again, I just went ahead and put fuel tank sealant on anything where fuel could potentially seep through. So then again, on that raised area of the fitting, using a toothpick, I put fuel tank sealant on that. I put fuel tank sealant underneath the washer. I put fuel tank sealant underneath the nut. There's a little bit of fuel tank sealant that gets on the threads. That's fine, because in theory, fuel could get past the threads and basically ride those threads. Let me start back here. If fuel were to get past this part of the fitting here, it could ride those threads all the way out. These threads here could ride all the way out and leak. So we want to get some fuel tank sealant on the threads, on the washer itself where it mates with on the back side of the nut where it mates with the washer, so fuel doesn't leak out of that, and then on the back side of the washer so the fuel doesn't leak out of there. And I don't know if I can get this in video. There's the anti-rotation bracket that holds the nut in place. Those couple of rivets, just like you do the rest of the rivets on the fuel tank, you want to put a little bit of sealant on the bracket itself where it mates with the access cover, and then you want to wet set those couple of rivets. After the rivets are set, these two rivets here. You can see I've got fuel tank sealant coming around the heads. And then on the back side I've got the shop head encapsulated with fuel tank sealant. And like I said, when I did the dry fit, I made sure that the fuel pickup tube is not dragging on the bottom. It's close, but it's not touching because I don't want my safety wire rubbing on the skin of the tank. It's clear of this stiffener bracket here. Down here in this corner, there's plenty of space between the tube itself and the stiffener. And then you see that it's not blocking, it's not over top of the drain. And then I clean everything. Again, I clean up all the excess fuel tank sealant. And then I moved on to putting the cover on itself. Now I choose to use the cork gasket because, like the instructions state, that's kind of like a sacrificial piece. If this plate ever needs to come out, that gasket will break apart and flake out, making removal easy, and then you just have to clean all of that out rather than fighting with fuel tank sealant only. I think the cork will help remove everything if I need to remove it. So I go ahead, I coated the back side of the cork gasket with fuel tank sealant, and I put 3 or 4 clecos in it to get the bolt holes oriented. Once it was oriented correctly, just with light finger pressure, I kind of pushed on it all the way around to attach it to the rib. I pulled the clecos off. Then I went ahead and, while the cork gasket is still in place, I went ahead and smeared around fuel tank sealant on this face side, and then went ahead and put the plate on and used my socket head screws with a little bit of fuel tank sealant underneath them as well. Position that, put the screws in, fuel tank sealant. And then when it came time to clean on the back side, I wanted to make sure to clean these where the screws came through. They usually have a good sized blob of RT or fuel tank sealant on the screw itself as it comes through the nut plate. I made sure to clean all of that off because, like I said, if you've got these screws with fuel tank sealant on them, when you pull this access cover off in the future, if you ever need to, as the screw gets backed out, it could clean off that fuel tank sealant blob, and then you've got all these little fuel tank sealant blobs laying around in your tank, and I don't like that, so I try to keep the screws relatively clean. So there again, as you can see, after the access cover plate was put on, I went ahead and cleaned everything, and in doing so, that creates the nice little fillet seal around everything. Same on the outside. Clean everything real nice, and that gives you your fillet seal. And then last but not least, I went ahead and did the sending unit. Again, same thing. No rubber gasket. This is just fuel tank sealant only as per the instructions. Put fuel tank sealant on the back side of this flange. Work the sensor in place. Clecoed it real quick just to get the clocking correct, and then one at a time pull out a cleco, a little bit of RTV under the washer and under the head. Run your bolt in, tighten it down, clean it. When you're using a cork gasket, these screws really don't get very tight at all. You want to pay really close attention to the gasket in the area where you're tightening the screw. Once it starts to compress and it squishes some RT or some fuel tank sealant out, stop. And then you don't want to go in a circular pattern initially. You want to skip around to evenly draw the plate down to the rib. You don't want to draw it down in any kind of a weird angle. But it's very it takes very little to start to squish that gasket. You don't want to overdo it. You got plenty of fuel tank sealant on both sides of the gasket. You just want to bring the cover plate down and make good contact and stop. And then do your cleaning. And as per the instructions, when you have this sender in place using an ohm meter, you want to check and make sure that you got good conductivity between this output lug and ground. And that's stated in the instructions as well. So this is done. I'm going to let this sit for probably a week or two. I'm going to go back to working on the aileron and the flaps and whatever's next for the wing. And then once I'm satisfied that this is nice and dry, I will fill it with water and see what gives. Hello again, everybody, and as usual, thanks for coming by. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you found it worthy, and again, as always, hopefully you found something that was worth your time. So thanks again for stopping by, and again, making this short and sweet. I've got contact information available now, so if you feel the need to help me out with my RV7 project, feel free to email me, or you can go to my GoFundMe, as I said in the beginning, at just do a search for Caretaker Arrow. That's Caretaker with a K, and again, I've got the Amazon wish list. And for you RV7 guys and girls out there, if you watch these videos and are moved to purchase an RV kit of your own, if you'd include my build number with your first order, Vans will give me $100. It's kind of like a referral, I guess. So if you were to do that, I would greatly appreciate it. It's no money out of your pocket. It's just something Vans does as an incentive. So as I said, if you decide to build and you order your first kit, if you'd include my builder number, I'd appreciate it. And all this contact information will be in the description of each video. So check out the description and do what you feel you need to do. And I would appreciate any help. And again, if you need some further assistance, contact me. I've got photographs, I've got videos. We can communicate directly, and hopefully I can give you some further guidance if you want it. So that's it. Again, thanks for stopping by. Come back frequently. I try to do a video or two every week if I can. So subscribe, keep coming back, and I will talk to you again soon. All right, thanks.